Hello, I'm Carl Taylor. Welcome to Carl Taylor Live on social media, we'll say today, because I don't know which one we're live on. We keep swapping, changing, mixing around. Might be live on both if these guys have figured it out. You haven't seen me for a while because I've been on holiday with my family down in the south of France. It was very nice. Long drive down there. Very, very hot, 40 Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but very hot. And but yeah, we had a good time. Now, I'm going to do a Q&A today. So if you've got any questions you'd like to ask, photography related questions, then of course, fire them in and hopefully I'll see them come up on this iPad. And while we're waiting for any questions to come in, thought we'd have a bit of a chat. Well, shall we? Let's have a bit of a chat about a couple of things. There's two things I want to talk about today. One is about all this hype at the moment about mirrorless cameras. It seems to be going mirrorless camera crazy at the moment, with Nikon recently releasing a new mirrorless camera. Canon also releasing a mirrorless camera, and they're all obviously following on from what Sony did a while ago with the A7 series full frame 35 mirrorless camera. So it's like Nikon and Canon are playing a bit of catch up. The reason this is kind of, sometimes we call these a rant, okay? And I'm going to try and not rant off too much. But the reason this is a little bit irritating for me is because we get a lot of questions come in on social media or by email, and it seems there's some misconceptions about what mirrorless means. You know, people have been saying, oh, you really need to do some photography training on mirrorless cameras. And I said, no, I don't, because using a mirrorless camera is really no different to using any conventional DSLR or SLR camera. The same principles of lenses, shutter speeds, apertures, and creative decisions need to be made. The only fundamental difference about a mirrorless camera is it's missing a mirror, okay? That's it. Most people, based on the comments we've been getting in, don't even seem to understand what the function of the mirror does in a DSLR camera, or why it's not in a mirrorless camera. So I thought I'll try and clear that up for those people that don't understand. I'm sure many of you do understand, but let's take a quick look at it. So here's a conventional DSLR. This is a Canon 5D Mark III, and this is a Sony A7. And you can see that the Sony is somewhat smaller than the Canon, and yet they both have exactly the same size, full frame, 35mm sensor. That's the sensor in there that captures the picture, which in here you can't see the sensor because there is a little, let me see if I can catch the light, there's a little mirror in there. But if we lift the mirror up out of the way like so, let me do it for a longer time, let's do it for 5 seconds. If we lift the mirror up out the way, I'm trying to catch that against the light, but it doesn't seem to be getting in there, the light. Let me just see. No, can't quite get it. Let's angle it that way. Well, anyway, you have to take my word. Yeah, bring that phone over here. Look, this is a great idea. Look, someone's just come up with putting a torch in there. Let's shine a torch. There you go. There's the mirror lifting up. There you can see the sensor inside. Okay, so that mirror just lifts up out the way for the photo, but on the Sony, there is no mirror, okay? So what's the purpose of the mirror? Well, the purpose is quite simple, and it's that the mirror in one of these cameras bounces the light that comes through the lens up into a prism here, so that the light pops out of the viewfinder and you see the real image. You're seeing real photons, real life light through a lens and through a mirror and through a prism. On mirrorless cameras, there is no mirror, so the image hits the sensor directly, and that means that there is no need for a mirror or a prism. The image that's generated for you to view is an artificial one. It's an electronic image. So you either view the image on the back here, or you view a little miniature TV screen that's built in there. And what that does is it means it reduces the size of the camera somewhat, probably I'd say by about 30%, making it 30% smaller, lighter, a little bit easier to carry, lenses are closer, and picture quality wise, this will give you as good as good as, if not better than this, not because of the mirrorless thing, just because the Sony's a really good camera. So, you know, that's the main difference. But in terms of capturing images, the techniques needed, the understanding of the physics of photography, shutter speeds, apertures, lighting, which is the most crucial part, and storytelling and narrative, that sort of thing, nothing really changes. So those that are getting confused by this, don't get carried away with the hype. All we're talking about with mirrorless cameras is a more condensed unit than a conventional SLR or DSLR camera. That's it. If we jump up to the bigger cameras like the medium format, the reason this is bigger, this has a mirror, there's the prism, it comes off. The mirror is inside here where the lens is. You can see this huge mirror inside there. We can't see it because of the light's not shining. But the sensor, as you can see, is massive. So we have a huge, massive medium format 100 megapixel sensor. So the reason that camera is bigger is because it has a bigger sensor. Now, going back to the 35mm ones, the mirror, taking the mirror away, gets the camera smaller. But in terms of taking pictures, shooting pictures creatively, nothing really changes. I'm hoping that what we'll see in mirrorless cameras in the future is the ability to go at higher flash sync speeds, because that would be nice. So by using electronic shutters and going to higher sync speeds, you can cut out more ambient daylight. If you don't fully understand that, we've got a great video on YouTube about understanding flash sync speeds. So check that out, and that will get you up to speed with understanding flash sync speeds. Interestingly, medium format cameras like this one can sync at any shutter speed because the shutter is in the lens, not in the camera body, and it uses a leaf shutter, and that means it can sync at any of the shutter speeds. So that's the main difference. Now we've got these 3 cameras on the market. This is on Digital Trends website here, and it's got a comparison of the A7 III, the new Nikon Z6, and the new Canon EOS R. Other benefits of them are maybe faster shooting rates because the mirror doesn't have to move up out the way every time it takes a picture. We can get faster frame rates. We may be able to shoot 8 or 12 frames a second as the Z6 is claiming. But the shutter speed range remains the same, 30 seconds to 1/8000th, all the usual stuff. One of the funny things that I keep reading on this is 693 focus points on the Sony A7, 273 hybrid phase detection focus points on the Nikon, and check this, 5,655 focus points on the Canon. I mean, what the hell? What the hell do we... This camera that I use mostly has 1 focus point in the middle. I focus, I recompose. Generally, I focus manually anyway because I'm doing mostly product commercial photography, or if I'm shooting fashion and a model and I've got to jump into a particular point, I'm pre-focusing on that particular point. Now, one thing that does seem useful to me in this is the eye detection that the new Canon mirrorless has got, which basically detects where your eye is looking in the viewfinder and focuses on that point. That's quite clever, but they've had that in some of the older EOS cameras for quite some time. Never seemed to work perfectly, but if that technology improves, then I can see that as being useful, because if you can look in the camera and then just look at a particular place in the viewfinder and that's where it focuses, that would be amazing if that worked 100% of the time. That would be a really great feature. But having 200 focus points, 2,000 focus points, or 5,000 focus points, what the hell? What's the point? I mean, I can work with 1 focus point and take perfectly clear images. Let's see if we've got any questions in so far before I move on to our next topic. Himat Parmar says, what is the best setting for product photography? There is no best setting. You can't give me an open question like that. What on earth is an open question like that? I mean, there are a million settings for product photography, generally associated with, let me just bring up some of my product photography. Everything to do with product photography, I can tell you now, everything to do with product photography, let's just take a look at these, is to do with lighting. That's the setting that you need. It's lighting, it's understanding lighting, okay? Product photography relies on beautiful contour lighting, gradient lighting, textural lighting, contrast, all these different factors to make the product look amazing. There is no one best setting. There are some lenses that I use all the time. So I commonly use an 80mm lens or a 100mm lens for most of my product photography work. And shutter speed is irrelevant because we're using flash, so it's as long as it syncs with the flash speed, that's fine. The only thing that's going to change is depth of field, so aperture settings for different products. And generally on product photography, I'm using larger depth of field, usually shooting at f16, f11, around about there. So there's no one setting. You need to concentrate on lighting. Next question, Silvercat 151 says, I'd be happy just to see some new lenses from Canon. Wouldn't we all? I'd like to see some new lenses from Hasselblad as well. I'd like to see new lenses is one of the most important things. Lens design will make the biggest impact on the photography, in my opinion. Better quality lenses that overcomes problems of diffraction, sharpness, chromatic aberration, all those sort of things. That's a good point. James Parrish says, the first camera was mirrorless. Yes, you're right. In the old days when they used the old view cameras, which, you know, some photographers like my friend Sean Comboy, architectural photography, you know, they don't use mirrors anyway. They've just got the recording medium, which is either film or a sensor, and a lens on a box, basically, on a concertina box. And so there was no mirrors in the first cameras anyway. But people seem to be getting confused by all this hype about mirrorless and stuff. It's just driving me bonkers because they seem to think that they need some special new training skills to operate them when nothing has changed. The thing I dislike, let me tell you a couple of things, right? I really like that they are more compact. I like the image quality that the Sony's put out. Canons are great and everything else. But the thing I dislike about mirrorless cameras is I don't like looking at a TV screen. When I'm looking in the viewfinder, I'm looking at essentially a little miniature television screen, and it never feels real, okay? When you look through a beautiful large viewfinder of a mirror through a prism, you're seeing the real photons, the real light, and I feel more connected with my subject, more connected with the product or the object that I'm shooting or the person that I'm shooting when I'm seeing the real life. When I'm seeing a representational image that's electronically brought together in the viewfinder via a very small TV screen, it doesn't seem to feel quite like photography to me in the same way. However, I have used this quite a lot. We use it mostly for video, but I suppose as they improve the electronic viewfinders, they may one day become so clear that it looks like looking through a prism. But at the moment, I still prefer looking through a mirror and prism. Bjorn, no, hold on. Sajid Abu Baker says, hi Carl, do we really need a light meter to get the right colors, or can the camera manage it? Well, you don't need a light meter to get the right colors. A light meter measures the amount of light. You can get color meters, which we used to use in the old days for film, so we knew what color temperature we were shooting in. You don't really need a light meter to take shot. I haven't used a light meter since I stopped shooting film in 2005. Your eyes, when you look at the image on the back of the camera or tethered into your computer, that's your light meter. That tells you whether the lighting is good or not. You just simply need to look at the light and say, is my lighting how I want it to be? Do I want that highlight darker, brighter? Do I want this shadow lighter, darker? And you adjust your lighting to suit. You have no better light meter than actually assessing the picture creatively and making a decision on that. There's no point measuring it. You don't even need to measure it to get in the ballpark. Just set the camera at f8 and take a shot. And if it's too bright, turn the lights down. If it's too dark, turn the lights up, and then start playing with it. It's a much better way of learning anyway. Right, Bjorn Havildsen says, hi Carl, when doing long exposures, several minutes, is it necessary to let the camera do the long noise reduction after the shutter closes? I spend a lot of time waiting for the camera to finish before I can do another exposure. I'm shooting in RAW. Actually, Bjorn, I think it helps, yes, because the noise reduction does give a better result from what I understand. But you're right, it's very frustrating because you have to wait for many, many more seconds, sometimes even a minute or more, for it to do the noise reduction processing. And I believe that it does obviously do what it's meant to do. So unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Tim Owen says, can the sensor get dirty quicker in a mirrorless camera? Well, that's a very good point. Yes, it can, but it's also a lot easier to clean it. Get me an air can, right? Now we get so many comments about this, right? I do the instructional videos for Hasselblad, thank you Ash. And in the instructional videos, I take this, you know, this $25,000 or $30,000 sensor, and I do this. I blow it with a compressed air can, and you get all these comments. Oh my God, you're going to get the liquid nitrogen that comes out when you do that, and it's going to ruin the sensor and all the rest of it. No, it's not, okay? It's not. Just shut up, okay? It's never going to do that if you don't shake the can or you don't invert the can. Squeeze the can, do that, purified air, no problem at all. Do not shake it, do not turn it upside down. So cleaning a mirrorless camera is a piece of cake. There you go. So that can stay there, that's fine, right? But do not turn that can upside down or shake it, or yes, then you could have a problem, that is for sure. So yes, they are easier to clean, is what Tim Owen was saying, because they can get dirtier than normal, but in many ways, I'm not even sure that's true. When the mirror lifts up in a mirrored camera, it sort of creates a sort of vacuum of air that sort of then could pull dust onto the sensor anyway. And really the only way dust gets in there is when you're changing the lenses. So the advantage obviously when you're changing the lenses on a normal DSLR is the mirror is down, which would stop some potential dust getting to the sensor so easily. And also obviously there is a shutter in the way as well, shutter blades there too. Now, Sal Alexander says, eye detects the eye of the model and focuses on that. It doesn't detect where the photographer is looking. Well, that's very interesting because there was and there has been sensors in the viewfinder that detect where you are looking to. So I don't know what the case is on the new Canon because I haven't looked at it, I haven't got one. Don't necessarily want one either. But good point if that is the case. If that is the case, then it'd be very interesting to see how accurate that is. You know, what if you're not photographing a model? If you're saying eye detect is detecting the person's eyes, well, what if I'm photographing product photography like this? It doesn't have any eyes, does it? Look, none of this stuff's got any eyes. Well, maybe the glasses would act as eyes. So, you know, where's it going to choose? So it's no use to me, okay? It's an additional function that is no use to me. I'm going to focus manually anyway for that sort of work. That's one of the things I hate. I hate technology for technology's sake. It just seems pointless, okay? Give me technology that is useful. If technology is useful, fantastic. Mohammed Baba says, will a mirrorless camera have a longer lifespan due to less moving parts? Possibly, I don't know, but the fact is that I've had this camera for donkey's years and no issues with it, lots of shutter accutations, never any problems. So they build these things to last anyway, so I wouldn't worry about that. Orlando, hi there, interesting talk, thank you. Justin Holding also says about the eye autofocus doesn't work, it tracks the subject of the eye. Well, who's assuming that we're photographing just people, okay? We're not just photographing people. So it seems a dumb feature unless it works really, really well and you're just photographing people all the time. As I said, most of the time I work with one focus point or I'm focusing manually anyway. Vicky's Artistry says, Carl, you mentioned contour lighting. What are the other types for product photography or terminology? Well, lighting is lighting, okay? There is a million types of lighting. If we look at these two pictures, right? This shot here that I shot on this Chanel Sublimage, this has gradient lighting on it. You can see these lovely gradients that I've put across the product, okay? So I call that gradient lighting, and it's also a gradient glow on the background. But this product shot uses harder individual point light sources to cause refraction that you're seeing coming from the bottle. But it also uses gradient lighting on the ribbons on the neck of the bottle. So there is all types of lighting depending on the emotion you're trying to convey. If you want to convey the emotion of a beautiful warm sunset, you're not going to go out and take that shot in the middle of the day, are you? You have to think about the emotion you're trying to convey and then find the lighting that conveys that. That's the most important thing, the most important characteristic. And it's also one of the most difficult things to accomplish in photography, and it's one of the things that we teach best over on Carl Taylor Education is understanding all the different types of lighting and how to convey mood and emotion with lighting. Next question. Blah, blah, blah. The EVF is actually my favorite part, comes really handy Outside, yeah, electronic viewfinder. John Cromwell, I'm a Nikon photographer shooting weddings, kids, portraits, etc. Should I turn to Hasselblad? Not necessarily, John. I think Hasselblad and medium format, cameras like this and cameras like the phase ones, they're essential for product photographers because you need very, very good tonal range on product photography, very high detail, very high sharpness, and they're also exceptionally good on fabrics, textiles for fashion photographers, and then, you know, the sort of high-end portrait photographers love them for the skin tones. So, you know, if you're at the very top of your game, normally people like using medium format, and if you can afford it, then great. I've got some friends, wedding photographers, top wedding photographers that like using them on weddings, but they also use 35mm as well. Generally speaking, for wedding photography, I think you're going to want to use a camera that can shoot a lot faster, like a Nikon, focus a lot quicker. These things focus slower. They shoot slower. You can only sort of shoot 1 frame a second, but the tonal range and the purity of the image is just so silky, unsurpassed. But it has drawbacks when you're trying to do rapid fire shooting. Next question, Andy Blanco. Hi Carl, what about still taking pictures with 35mm camera? I do sometimes still take pictures with 35mm cameras when I need to, when I need faster frame rates, faster shooting rates, quicker focusing. If I was doing, like, say, a wildlife sport or something like that, which I don't do, but if I was doing something like that, that's where I'd consider. So you use the right tools for the right job, basically. Next question, Waleed says, is the best focus on ISO during recording video? I have no idea what that question means. I'm not sure what that is. Is the best focus on ISO during recording video? I don't understand the question, I'm afraid, Waleed. Why mirrorless cameras lenses are so expensive? Fardin Oyan says that. I don't know why. I don't think they're any more expensive than any other lens from what I understand. As a matter of fact, I thought they might have been actually less expensive. I haven't checked the prices recently, but I don't expect the lens prices to be considerably different. Jeremy Russo says, hi Carl, I got some issues with mixing soft and hard light during a product shoot. I got a double shadow and it was not really beautiful. How do you manage that generally? Finally, I'm not sure I should use soft and hard light together or I should place at the same time. You should definitely use hard and soft light together. I mean, it's one of my favorite tricks in product photography. As a matter of fact, if we jump down to some food photography, like this one, here's a great example. This shot uses soft light. You can see predominantly soft light and predominantly soft sort of shadows around. But you can also see a slightly crisper shadow cast by the berries and a slight bit of sparkle in the highlights on the food. If I had shot that just with softbox light and just soft light, then it would have looked a little bit dull and a little bit flat. So quite often in my product photography, I do a combination of soft and hard light. The trick, whoever that was, Jeremy, is the balance of the two light sources, of the soft light and the hard light. Which one is the key light, which one is the fill? And it's working out those things. And then it's the definition of soft light. Your definition of soft light may be a long way away from my definition of soft light. Soft light is not just a softbox a meter away from your subject. That isn't even soft light. That is nowhere near soft light. So head over to Carl Taylor Education and you'll see how I do it. Guy Dunn, the new Canon stops dust reaching the sensor when the lens is off by covering it. Wonderful. Couldn't care less, to be honest, but thanks for the information. I'm sure some of our viewers will care. I'm done with all this nonsense hype about mirrorless versus DSLR. I just want a tool. They're just tools, okay? There's all this, like, everyone goes crazy about camera systems. They're just tools for taking photos. I can take good photos on this if I have to. These make my job more high quality, more efficient in what I do. There's no difference. There's not going to be any difference, okay, between mirrorless and DSLR. So everyone's going crazy about this. If you prefer a more compact camera and you don't mind looking through an electronic viewfinder, then go for a mirrorless camera. If you prefer looking through a real viewfinder and seeing the real light and the real photons, then go for a DSLR camera. If you don't mind taking the extra weight around with you. Right. Where are we? Broadway Simon. How can I avoid reflection on like a polished bottle cap? You light it properly. That's what you do. You light it with the right type of lighting. So look, for example, like this watch. There's a highly polished metal surface. The highlights, though, that I've captured are controlled and contained, okay? And that's done through understanding lighting. In that particular instance, I used large scrim gradient lighting at the right exposure level. It's too complicated to explain how to do that in this short conversation, but head over to Carl Taylor Education and have a look at some of the lighting tutorials there. Justin, no, someone else has said that. The question's already been asked. What do you think about anti-aliasing filters? Well, generally the camera manufacturers get it right, the anti-aliasing filters that they apply. Some people prefer without anti-aliasing filters, but generally I think the camera manufacturers get their market, their target market right, and their cameras right. How important Vidya says, how important to use a polarizing filter while doing shiny product photography? Not really important, because if you use a polarizing filter on shiny products, apart from metal, then you're going to polarize the light and take the shiny reflection away. If you want to remove the reflection, then you'd have to think about, well, why did you light it a certain way? You can't polarize light off a metal anyway, because the way the electromagnetic spectrum bounces and the electrons react off metal is different. So on a polarizing filter doesn't work on metal, but it would work on a glass bottle. So for example, like on shots like I do, like say wine bottles like this, for example, can you get the bottom of the shot in as well? Just it's a little bit, I don't know, how are you zooming in on that? But it's on shots like this, for example, you want the reflection on the glass. But if you polarize the light, you'll remove the reflection off the glass, or you can partially remove the reflection off the glass. And that sometimes is an interesting technique that I do apply on some product photography. Next question is, hold on, I've got so many questions coming in. I'm going to have to take a break in a second. And what Creative Skate says, what backdrop do you prefer? Seamless paper? No, actually I prefer a solid wall. I prefer a solid cove wall, or a mobile flat wall. Like we've got a mobile wall, like a wall on wheels. I much prefer a solid wall because I can paint them, they're smooth. Paper often gives ripples in the background, especially after it's been hanging up for a while. If you hang your paper rolls up, always put the metal rods through it so they don't bend. But humidity affects the paper. There's lots of things that affect the paper, and you can end up with ripples. And then when you put a background light on it, you can see the ripples. So I prefer using solid walls as background. Next question, what do you think about the new Nikon F mount? Oh, no idea, I'm not even answering that question, sorry. Camera, sorry, I don't know. That's why I'm not gonna, it's technical stuff that I don't know, okay? I'm a photographer, not a technician in that sense, okay? I try to make beautiful pictures. You ask me anything about lighting, don't ask me about specific technical nonsense about cameras, okay? Because I'm not even interested. I'm interested in photography and making great photos. That's it. Right. What type? Here's a good question. Mario Post says, "Hi Carl. What type of photography do you love the most?" I actually love product photography the most. That's my skill set, is in making boring, everyday, mundane objects look amazing. That's what I do. Okay. It's about getting a product like that and making it look desirable. Because when you pick that up in the supermarket and you hold it in your hands, it looks boring. But when you can make it look amazing and desirable through photography and lighting, that's what I love doing. I also like photographing beautiful models as well, unsurprisingly, but more because I find the dynamic of it quite interesting. So again, working with people sometimes adds another dimension. So I enjoy doing that, but it's not what I do most of the time. Next one. Carl, is a cheaper medium format like the Fuji still better image quality than the DSLR? Yes, nearly any medium format camera is going to give you better quality as long as the lenses are good. Right, I'm going to quick go on to my next topic before I take a few more questions. Talking about fashion photography, there's been, this is really interesting. Look, see, these are fashion models that aren't real. And yet they've got Instagram accounts, okay, and millions of followers, okay. Some of these, look, this is another one here. Fashion models with Instagram accounts that are made in CGI. Here's some here, and some of these Instagram. Look, she's got 8 point. I call her she. She's not even a she. It's just a pixel. okay? It has got 8.4 million followers. Now it's interesting because the rise of CGI in photography, it's been a big thing in car photography. So those cars there, they're not real, okay? There's this CGI imagery, and this has been common for a long time in car photography because, you know, they make the 3D model to design the car anyway, and then they can render it, and it means they can, you know, create the images of the cars. But now we're starting to see this CGI starting to appear with, that one's a real model. But it's still a long way from real, you know. It's a long, long way from real, okay? It doesn't look real to me at all. But you can see they're trying, okay? They're starting to do it. They've got Instagram accounts. They've got Instagram followers. I wonder if it's ever going to get to the point where it's real. I think it's a long way off because the human brain is very good at perceiving skin texture, hair, expression, emotion, and CGI in fashion, I think, is a long way off. Now, that leads me nicely onto this wonderful young lady. This is Daria Belikova. She is a Russian fashion photographer, super talented young lady. This is some of her work. She's going to be a guest on my talk show next, when is it? Next Thursday. This is Daria, there she is, beautiful young lady, does some amazing work. She's a guest on Carl Taylor Education on our live talk show at, what time is it? 6 p.m. UK time, that's 1300 New York time, 20th of September. If you're interested in fashion photography and you don't want to look at any of that CGI nonsense and you want to see some quality work like this and you want to learn how she does it and understand her thought process and her creativity, then join us on that live show next Thursday. I'm really looking forward to interviewing her. Right, let's take another question here. Sidar says, hi Carl, how are you? I'm good, thank you. Did the Wacom Cintiq improve your workflow? Does it make you more efficient? It did, but I went off it, okay? So I used the Wacom Cintiq, that's the big one where you retouch on the screen, but I find that the cover that they put over the screen that allows you to have the pressure sensitivity directly on the screen makes the image a little bit fuzzy. I went back to using a Wacom tablet with an ISO monitor, with a 4K ISO monitor, but Wacom have now brought out a 4K tablet screen, but again, I think it's got that surface layer which just slightly softens the screen. So in the end, I'd say, Sidar, no, I've gone back to using just the Wacom tablet with a high quality monitor. Maria Smith says, hi Carl, thank you for the live chat, it made my day. I'm trying to learn more about photography technology and I find your videos very helpful. Well, I appreciate that, Maria, but I wouldn't say I'm a great conveyor of information on technology because I don't really keep up to date with all the brands and the latest, you know, cameras, etc. I'm more about photography itself as an art form and a lot more to do with lighting. And in my opinion, no, actually not in my opinion, fact, okay, fact, you can capture a great image on any of these cameras. Mirrorless, DSLR, crop sensor, medium, you can capture a great image. What will define the great image is your vision and the lighting that you apply. It's about emotion. Eugene Go. Hello, Eugene in Singapore. How are you? I know Eugene because he works for Broncolor in Singapore, and I did a workshop with him a couple of years ago. Hey, Carl, what about the constant desire for f1.4, f1, etc.? At the end, when they get it, they complain the lens is huge. And as Magnus Pike used to say, science. Yeah, and it's true, it is science, okay? If you want large aperture lenses, then generally the lens has got to be bigger to let the light in, and that means, yeah, larger lenses. So you can't have everything. It's restricted by physics in many ways about how large the aperture needs to be to gather that amount of light. The other problem with large aperture lenses is that often when people shoot at 1.2, they find them unusable. The depth of field is so shallow that even if you move as a photographer after you've composed the shot, even if you breathe and move back an inch, then you are going to put your picture out of focus. So what you need to do is, if you're using very shallow depth of field lenses, you've really got to concentrate on having the subject very still and you very still. Otherwise, you're not going to benefit from these very shallow depth of field lenses anyway. Next one, does Carl Taylor Education, Russell Spencer says, does Carl Taylor Education discuss the business side of things? Yes, it does very much so. There you go. Look, there's a whole genre chapter dedicated to business where I tell you everything about marketing, supply, demand, market, loads of business download documents. So yes, I won't flog that anymore. Next one, Zagan says, would you buy any of the new mirrorless cameras? Well, we've got one already, so I guess yes. Next question. Hasselblad HD3D39, still a good camera? Yeah, it is. It's literally a 40 megapixel camera with great tonal range. It's not always about the megapixels, okay? You can squish 40 megapixels or 100 megapixels in this shape. It's about the fact that it's physically larger, and the physically larger space means that the tonal transition across that space is smoother and silkier. As it's always been, even when back in the old days when we were shooting, we used to shoot on film sheets, 5 by 4 inches large. And in some studios I knew, they used to shoot 10 by 8 inch sheets of film, not just for extra resolution, but for the silkiness of the tonal range that can be captured. And that's one of the things that medium format does. Right, I've got, and we're gonna have to cut it on the end. Right, the polarizing filters, does it change the colors of the photos? Yes, to some extent it does. It saturates colors more, especially reds and blues. Jose Racino Serrano, if you had to start with one light and a modifier for portrait, what would you get? Well, if you had to start cost effectively, I'd go with an Octabox 150. If you had no budget, that you didn't, if you weren't worried about budget, then you'd buy more than one light, wouldn't you? But if you weren't worried about budget, I'd buy a Broncolor Para 133. That's my favorite lighting modifier for portrait work. Kofi Jr., can you clarify where you purchased your diffuser to make your light quality softer? You can purchase it on Carl Taylor Education website, okay? It's in the shop section. Next one, Olivier de Montreal says, what's your most favorite essential lighting tool that you would take on an island with you? I would probably take anything to do with photography on an island with me. I would take some survival equipment, a hunting knife, some fishing line, and a tent. And I don't think photography would be the last thing on my mind. It would be the last thing on my mind. If I had to take photos on this mystical island, it would be the Para 133 lighting modifier would be my choice, one of my favorite lighting modifiers. Kamal says, is the best lens for fashion or portrait in a studio including f-stop lens? Anyone? I know. What's the best lens? I mean, every lens has got every lens has got aperture blades, so f-stop, I don't understand. My favorite focal length is around 80 to 100 millimeter for beauty fashion work. Next question, Zagan says, do you think Canon and Nikon will bring out new pro top-level DSLR cameras before top-level mirrorless cameras? I think it'll be interesting to see what. I don't think DSLR cameras are dead by any means, that's for sure. There are a lot of photographers who don't like looking at an electronic viewfinder. Next question. Dimitri says, I think mirrorless camera is more useful everywhere besides studio because you see results before shooting. Well, you can see the result on a DSLR because as soon as you take the picture, it comes up on the back of the screen. So I don't agree with that. Dimitri also says, more useful because through the mirror, you see the light more accurate. Well, no, you see the exposure. You see in the electronic viewfinder, you can see the perceived exposure because as you change the settings, the electronic viewfinder can get brighter or darker if you set it to do that. But you can see the result on the LCD screen on the back of these as soon as you take the picture, so it doesn't really make much odds. You can do a test shot anyway. Do polarizing filters change the quality of your picture? No, sometimes they can enhance the quality. Dileep says body image stabilization versus lens stabilization. No idea. Both, I mean, I've used lens stabilization on some of the lenses. This has got sensor stabilization. Maybe both combined would be best. I'm not really bothered. I just do, you know, if it does the job, great. This hasn't got any stabilization. I seem to cope perfectly well. Mick Duckworth. Hello, Mick. Please could you put a link on the Russian photographer? I missed the address. Go over to carltayloreducation.com, Mick, and go to the live shows page and you will see a link there about her. And there's also on our blog, okay? Follow the link on the blog to her work. But it's dariabelikova.com, I believe. Now, Another question, Rob Galton says, I bought a new portrait lens and I've had complaints that it's too sharp from the subjects and I have to Photoshop it down. Do you have that problem? I very much doubt that's to do with the lens, okay? I don't think there can be such a thing as a lens that's too sharp. There can be a camera or the digital processing of the file that is over sharpening the image, or in Lightroom you're exporting the images with additional sharpening, which can be a problem. So that could be an issue, but you should never be able to complain about a lens being too sharp. You could certainly complain about it being too high contrast. The design of the lenses, the way they record the light, you may end up with something that's too high contrast. That could be a possible problem. Next one, Pat Mullen says, crazy question, which color appeals to you photographically? That's interesting actually. I kind of tend to go for mostly neutral grays and stuff, but then with blips of color on top of it. A lot of that in my fashion work, but I suppose sort of bluey cyans. I like cyan as a color a lot. Surabar says, single light product photography, which light do I use? I'm not a professional photographer. I shoot with my Sony smartphone. Well, you'd have to use a light like a softbox or a broad light to get flattering light on your subjects, okay? So soft light is generally the easiest light to work with, but the definition of soft light, people get confused. A softbox this size, 2 meters away from your subject, is not a soft light, that's a hard light. Even a big softbox, 3 meters away from your subject, is not a soft light anymore. Soft light needs to be very big if it's far away, very, very big, or it needs to be a lot closer to your subject to make it soft. Igor Slovak says, is it possible to take photos on your Hasselblad with second curtain synchronization? Yes, it is, Igor. That is perfectly possible. Carlos Alvarado says, would you shoot with an M4 III for the work you do? Do you think they are pro-level gear? I think you're talking about Leica. Leica makes some great cameras too, but I haven't used them for a long time, so I don't know. Melly says, do you have a tutorial video for dark food photography? We've got lots of tutorials for food photography. I don't know what you mean by dark food photography. But we've got some great examples of food photography. Let me just jump back to my own website let me show you that if you mean dark, like a dark subject. Did this really nice one with Anna Pushtinikova on a, oh, it's not on there. I thought it was on there, but it's not on there. But yeah, we've got some examples of sort of stylish, there it is, yeah, this one. So this one, why is that, on that crop, you've got, have you zoomed in? Is it the magnification? Right, so I guess you could call that kind of a dark style shot there. Anyway, right, next one. We're going to take 3 more questions and then we're done because we are running out of time. What's the next question? Mark, no, hold on. I'm trying to catch up with, I would like to know your opinion about Leica cameras. Again, I'm not technically, I don't know anything about them. I know they make good cameras, but if you want to know about which camera's got the best MTF curve for the lens, that's modular transfer function graphs, which focal length, which body, which shooting speed, all that stuff, they're all just tools. Just go and look in some camera review magazine. I'm really not interested in that sort of information. I'm not really interested in that stuff. It's kind of the debate I'm having here. I had a great rant about, you know, these things are just tools. I'm interested in creativity. I'm interested in understanding the emotion of light and composition and creating images, okay? This technological stuff, all these cameras can do a good job. They'll outdo what most people are capable of or what they need them for. That's for sure. Deepak says, would you recommend the Tamron 28 to 75? Again, I'm sorry, Deepak, but again, it's a question about a lens I've never used. So I'm not, you know, this is not my area of expertise on, you know, go see, what's his name, Kai, whatever, he does all the reviews on all the cameras, all the crazy reviews, very funny guy. That's the sort of guy you want to see if you want to get all the technical little details on, is it this slightly sharper, is it shoot slightly quicker, is it blah, blah, blah. I'm not here for that. I'm here as an educator to teach you better photography skills, not about reviewing cameras. So I'm afraid I can't answer that question either. Mark Horsfield, how do you focus the light for a small point on product photography? You can use mirrors, or I use Broncolor Pico lights with a projection attachment. I can create a patch of light, literally 2 millimeters square if I want to with that particular light. Therat says, what is the cell phone camera that you like to use? I've got an iPhone 6S. That's what I shoot most of my pictures on holiday with of my kids and family. Powell says, when are you coming to Ireland for a bit of shooting? I would like to, actually, because it's a lovely place. Roy Andecart says, you're saying that sharpening the image on a camera can mess with the quality Yes, it can. If you do an export from Lightroom and you add sharpening, you can sometimes over sharpen the image. So I generally tend to do the sharpening on the image as the final stage of my process. And I've got a few techniques that I teach, some to do with unsharp mask techniques, some unsharp mask techniques that actually create local contrast, what we call local contrast adjustment. Remember that sharpening isn't sharpening anything, okay? This is a myth, all right? You have got a picture that is just full of squares, pixels, okay? And they don't make the squares any sharper. The squares remain squares. All that happens is the contrast between adjoining pixels changes. So where you've got a range of sort of darkish pixels and lightish pixels, the contrast level between them changes, which creates the impression of a sharper edge. Nothing's getting sharpened at all. Don't ever think sharpening. There's no sharpening, okay? It's the perception via contrast. And there are different methods of applying that contrast change via edge sharpening, local contrast, where the contrast feathers changes and meets towards the edge. This is quite technical stuff. It's covered in some of our post-production courses on carltayloreducation.com. Right, stop questions, please. I can't take any more questions. I'm going to answer the last couple of questions there. Someone says, what does he say? What Hassi lenses do you use for the H6 most frequently? I use the 80mm and the 100mm most frequently for product and portrait work. Funi Usthame says, Para 133 is comprised of 24 panels. Yes, it is. Why the number of sides and the fabric is so important? Well, because it's a parabolic reflector, a parabola. Okay, if you want to form a true parabola, and you need a true parabola or true parabolic shape to funnel the light out perfectly, the more facets you have, the more curved it is. So the more facets, the more curved and accurate the parabolic shape is. Go on Wikipedia, look up parabola, and understand the physics of how a parabola works and why light bounces out of it a certain way. This is why cheap copies of parabolic reflectors, like parabolic umbrellas, and they call them parabolic, but they're not even parabolic shape half the time. And if they've got less facets, they're less curved, they're less perfectly curved. So therefore, they're not going to do what a parabola should do. That's why the Bron ones are very good, because they've got 24 facets, which makes them quite a smooth, continuous tone. Next one says, Vishal says, do you think while shooting every single fashion shoot, do you apply something new ideas behind the shoot? Well, I try to. I mean, if we look at my people gallery, if you want to look at my work on carltaylor.com, I try to come up with creative stuff like this, you know. I try to come up with new ideas, new concepts. I always pre-visualize my shots and think of things that I like. I mean, this one isn't specifically original. I mean, we've all seen girls sort of swinging on a swing, but I've still tried to make it something that has a nice emotion and nice feel to the shot. This one is something original that I concepted up, and I really like it, and it was really well received. So, yes. I think it's important to pre-visualize. It's important to come up with concepts. It's great to take inspiration from other photographers' work, but sketch out your own ideas and try to think of things, sketch them down, plan your shots, and then execute them. Next one says, Alexander says, how do you get advertising agencies to notice your work, especially when you're starting out as a commercial photographer? It's very difficult, Alexander. Back in the old days, I used to bang on doors, try and get appointments to see them with my portfolio, send them printed postcards, material, and just keep hassling them. There is nothing's going to come through your inbox just because you've got a website. You have to get it in front of people, and you have to have great work, okay? If what you're trying to push in front of them isn't any good, they're not going to be interested. If what you've got is amazing work and you keep pushing it in front of them, then you'll eventually get an appointment to go and see them. Next one. Andre, what do you use to stay creative day to day? Music and yeah, just take inspiration from the world around me. Okay, I look at stuff, I observe stuff, see things, gives me ideas, and listening to music. Next one. I watch a lot of films. I love watching movies, and a lot of films and movies give me ideas as well for lighting and lighting styles. James Parrish says, Carl, I found a video on the parabolic umbrellas, and what is a true parabolic umbrella? Good. Okay. Vladimir, I know why Carl is grumpy. Reading some questions here, I have a need to break my monitor and tablet. You know where I'm coming from sometimes, Vladimir. No, I mean, there's some relevant questions here. What can't answer, I'm afraid, is all this tech questions. I hate these geek questions. These geek questions about, is this particular lens better than that lens? I don't know. I don't own every lens in the world. I've got the lenses and cameras I use, so I can only really answer about the gear that I use. If I tried to answer about something I've never used or never tested, I'd only be lying, okay? There's no point in me trying to make stuff up about kit that I've never used. And to be honest, most of this kit will outdo what you can perform and what you're going to shoot with it anyway. Most people ask gear questions because of a fear factor, because, you know, we're driven with marketing to fear. Oh no, am I buying the right one? Is it the right one? Has it got enough megapixels? Is it going to shoot fast enough? And you'll find you're never going to shoot at 10 frames per second. You're never going to need 4,000 auto focus points. You're never going to need focusing that fast or this fast, or, you know, just start shooting and thinking about photography and really understand light. That's the crucial thing. Emotion is the crucial thing to your pictures. All this techno garble isn't really going to help your photography. Andrew Ship says, I have a friend where I keep telling them that they should view your images, your photography, through the viewfinder and not on the back of your camera. Am I right in advising them to do this? Yeah, I mean, I prefer it viewing through the viewfinder, but I mostly shoot tethered, so I shoot through the viewfinder and then I take my test shot and I look at a large capture on screen that's tethered, and then I make my fine tuning on my lighting decisions based on what I'm seeing on screen. And then final question is from David Blocks. How much is the online workshops? David, our pricing is very, very simple. It is $14 per month or £12 per month, whichever currency you prefer, and it gives you access to everything that we do. Live shows, all our courses, all our downloadable resources and material. That simple. Check it out, Carl Taylor Education. Right, thank you very much for joining me. We are going to try and do more of these live Facebooks each week, so stay aware. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Make sure you push the get notifications, etc., etc. I'm Carl Taylor. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you next time.